I hope you're doing well today. We're going to be talking about the 5 reasons that people ignore your advice. And to give you a little testament to why you should listen to me, I actually just thought of a very long ago memory that resurfaced in my mind recently. And it was back when I was in second or third grade. And at that time, we were having like a party. It was like at the end of the end of the school year, and people were bringing juice packs and stuff. And these juice packs, they're called Capri Sun. I don't know if you know them, but basically they have a lot of sugar. And I remember at that time, I already kind of knew that they were bad for you. And I remember telling my friend, hey, don't drink that. It's not good for you. It's not healthy. And he just looked at me and he said, so? And I was like, offended because I'm telling you, hey, it's healthy. And he's like, so? I don't care. And it was almost like cool to be unhealthy. I'm like, dude, that's bad for you. But it didn't matter what I said. I tried to convince him. I was like trying to hit him with the logic. But really, nothing worked. And only later did I realize that when you try to convince people, when you try to sell people, when you try to change the way that other people think about you, you've got to realize that it's not the logic that changes them. It's how you approach the interaction. So that's why I've got 5 pillars for you to go by when you're trying to convince people. 5 pillars to go by when you're trying to give people advice. Now, the first pillar is, or these are kind of things, the reasons why they will not take your advice, okay? The first reason people will not take your advice is that they don't have any need for what you do. And the way that I approach when people say, like, oh, I don't need that, is just understand in your mind that they don't get it yet. They don't understand why they would need that. So when they say, I don't need that, I don't know, then they're shying off. One of the reasons that could be is because they don't need, and what you got to do is, instead of like being, oh, okay, this person doesn't need it, try to explain to them more. Try to show them why it will benefit them. Show them why it hurts them more to be without the advice that you're giving than to be like, it hurts them more to be without your advice than with it. And the same thing is with products. If you sell, if you're a company, right, if you have a business, if you yourself are selling anything, you have to understand that if your product is good, which it should be good, you have to tell the other person that it's really going to be worse for them if they don't purchase. That purchasing will gain them money instead. Like, if it's going to cost them if they don't. That's the first thing that you got to understand. You got to appeal to their motives. You can't just talk about you. You got to appeal to them. So in that situation, when my friend was drinking these Capri Suns, I should have said, yo, do you want to look good? Do you want to look fit? Because that's something that they actually need. They don't understand how being healthy relates to having attraction. You have to build that bridge, even if in your mind it seems, oh yeah, that's kind of obvious. Okay, so the second reason why they won't why they won't take your advice or why they won't purchase from you is that they have no money. And this is just like in the selling perspective, right? Most people will say, oh, I don't have the money in the selling perspective, but when you're trying to give advice, people will be like, oh, I don't have the time. Oh, I don't have the blah, right? Whatever it is, I don't have blah, something. So instead of approaching it like trying to attack them or trying to, just backing off, what I would say is like, try to be an assistant buyer in the terms of selling. So instead of trying to selling them something, try to be the person who's trying to help them get the best deal. Don't be the person who's giving them something. Be the person who's trying to help them find the best thing that's for them. Right? And say, if you put your money here, it's going to be the best invested money you ever had. In terms of advice, if you put your time here, it will be the most productive, most efficient piece of time that you have in your life. That's why you should do it. Be the person who's like the intermediary. Don't be the person who's saying, oh yeah, you should do this, you should get this. Help them. Go on their side and help them make the decision. A lot of advice changes when you think about it that way. You're not trying to convince anybody of anything. You're trying to help them find it in themselves. Okay, then the next one is the fact that they don't have any rush. And how I like to approach this is assume that they are going to go with what you're saying. assume that they're going to go with what you're saying. Because if you don't, that means you don't really believe in your own advice. You don't really believe in your own product. You don't really believe in what you're trying to offer them. So instead of being like, do you want to do this or not? Say, how would you like to do this? It's easier to put this in terms of like business and selling. Like, let's say you have a product and there's a version, like a green version, a blue version, right? Instead of saying, hey, do you want to buy the product or not? You could say, hey, do you want to buy the blue product or the green product? Which one do you think would help you more? And it's weird because you'll find that people just, they don't really get it. Like, because at that moment, when they make up something like, oh, I don't really want to buy it, or I don't really want to take that advice, I don't know if I have the time, what they're really saying is that, like, they're not sure. They're hesitant. And when you give them an option like that, it's like, oh, I mean, I might as well just pick something. It's weird, but when you try it, it really works. I don't know how to explain it really well, but I call it the alternate choice clause. So if you're ever in a situation where you're trying to convince someone of something, or you're trying to sell something, you want to offer different options instead of offering the option between something and nothing. Okay, the next pillar of why they won't buy from you or take your advice is the fact that they don't have any desire for what you have. This is similar to the need aspect, and it's the fact that you have to convince them that they're going to lose more without your product or without your advice. And to do this, you really got to believe in your product yourself. You can't just give advice that you don't even follow. You can't give a product that you don't even have. You have to really believe that this product or this advice has changed your life. Don't add to the fire. When they start arguing and having objections, don't try to attack those objections and try to argue with them back, because that's really just adding fire to it. Instead, take a step back. When they say, oh, I don't need it, and just say, well, do you want to feel confident, right? Let's say you are trying to show them, some, like something about building a body, and you're like, do you want to feel confident? Do you want to be attractive? And then it's like the ball is now back on their court, and they're the one thinking. When you're the one thinking, it's difficult for you to make the connection for them, but they have to, when they start thinking about themselves, when they start thinking about it for themselves, they'll find that they come up with the answer themselves. They'll make the connection themselves, and you got to help that connection happen. You can't just expect there to be a connection between, oh, drinking a Capri Sun means that you will not look good. Like, you have to make that connection for them. So don't try to argue with them, because that's going to get them more set in their ways. Instead, take a step back and ask them questions so it brings them out, like it brings their own ideas out. And the final pillar of why people won't take your advice is the fact that they don't trust you. And this is the most important, because it's really something that you can change. So to get other people to trust you, you want to become the assistant buyer, like I said before. You want to go on their side. You want to almost be their friend. Because if you've ever heard the term that people don't buy from businesses, they buy from people, it really is true. People don't buy from businesses. They buy from people they trust. They buy from people they believe in. So if you want to give advice, it's the same thing. Product and advice, same thing. If you want to give advice, you got to be someone that they trust can get them the result that they want. So this is why you can't be a hypocrite. You have to practice what you preach. If you're trying to show someone how to be healthier, and like you're eating, whatever you want, you're eating like junk food or whatever, you're eating a bunch of carbs, why would they take your advice? You have to be someone that they trust. And a beautiful way that I like to think about it is ask the question, if there was a way that I could show you that this advice would get you to this result, would you take it? And now they have to say yes, right? They have to say yes. And when they say yes, then you keep going, and suddenly it's like you're on their side. It's not like, oh, I'm telling you that this advice is going to change you. No, 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 no. You help them find it. If I could show you that this advice would help you change your life, do you think that you would be interested? If you could convince yourself that this advice would be helpful, would you be interested? Always kind of use the term if you could convince yourself, because you don't want the other person to think that you're sitting there and telling them. People want to feel like they're right. So give them that opportunity. Let their ideas come out. Plant that seed in their mind, and then let them bring it forth, if that makes any sense. And another way is to ask, how important is the end result to you? So how important is being attractive to you? That's what I could have told my friend. How important is looking good for you? How important is, having a six-pack for you? And those kind of questions will be like, oh, that's pretty important, so why it's not worth the Capri Sun. Does that make sense? They'll make it up in their own mind, why your advice will be important. And finally, the last three things, these are not pillars, but these are just parts of having trust. These are the basic blocks of just being a human in regular life. One, you have to smile. A lot of people don't smile, and it's a mistake because people trust people that smile. Why would you trust someone who's always looks grumpy, or someone who's constantly smiling, who's constantly making you feel better? Never. So just smile all the time. Try to set a goal, just try to smile throughout the day. And then always use their name. This is another thing that I've learned recently, is that people really respond to their name because it's the one thing in any language that is really important to them. It's the most important word in any language. So if you can use their name, don't overuse it, but if you sprinkle it around, people will be drawn to you. And it will really be like you're their friend. And you should try to be their friend. It's not like you're trying to manipulate them. You have to believe in what you're doing. That's where it all comes from. It all comes from self-confidence. You have to have the belief in yourself. You have to have self-confidence. And the way I've built my own self-confidence was through working out. If you're a skinny guy right now, if you're someone who doesn't have that much confidence, if you're an introvert, if you want to even learn these steps, you first have to go through the trials of building a body that you actually respect. And recently I've started working on a program to help you with gymnastic rings. And gymnastic rings, basically, they're pieces of equipment you could take anywhere. And I built my entire body on that. I've never been to a real proper gym. I just work out on gymnastic rings. So I'm building a program I'm building a program, something like that will only use gymnastic rings that you can use anywhere. There are no excuses. There's no gym. There's no, commute. It's just gymnastic rings. That's it. So if you're interested in that, I'm going to leave a link in the description for my Instagram, which is where I'll be posting more about it. So, I hope you got a lot from this video. Go out and conquer.